Welcome back to CBS This Morning. The U.S. Army says we will fix this. That is a very powerful message following a scathing report, and scathing is a word, into leadership failures at Fort Hood. The 136-page report describes a pattern of command failures, sexual assaults, and soldier deaths. At least 25 of those deaths happened in this year alone. 14 officers and enlisted personnel at the Texas base were fired or suspended, an unprecedented action in the Army's history. Now, the report was commissioned after the murder of Specialist Vanessa Gillespie. Mireya Villarreal has been covering this investigation, reports from Fort Hood.
When I was private, I was in Korea and I was sexually assaulted by my NCO.
Emotional stories of sexual assault, intimidation, and leadership failures quieted a stadium filled with thousands of Fort Hood soldiers.
I figure even if I didn't get justice, if anything, I could help not only females, but other soldiers, and really anybody out there who's been violated like that, to speak up and have people help them.
Specialist Samantha Pemberton and Andrea Bird shared their painful stories with us. Both alleged they were assaulted by members of the military.
Honestly, I'm here to make a difference. Majority of the females that I meet in the military have been raped, have been assaulted by military men.
Their revelations followed the Army's long-awaited independent review results. The report named 9 major flaws within Fort Hood and the Army as a whole. Among them, the command climate at Fort Hood has been permissive of sexual harassment and sexual assault. And the Army Sexual Assault Reporting Program, known as SHARP, is structurally flawed.
What do you say to the victims who did not have enough confidence in the Army to report crimes like sexual harassment and sexual assault?
I think that's the first thing you've got to do as a leader, is step out to establish a connection and let them know, hey, look, if it's not working right now and you don't want to report it, there is somebody you can report to. Call me up.
The numbers in this report are staggering. Of the 507 female soldiers interviewed, the review found 93 credible cases of sexual assault, but only 59 of those were reported. It also found 135 cases of sexual harassment, yet only 72 were reported.
One of the things that the soldiers at Fort Hood, many of them needed, was to be believed. And that was what we did. We listened, and so if any of them see this, I want them to know we believe you.
Specialist Vanessa Gillespie told her friends and family she was sexually harassed by a fellow soldier before she was murdered in April. Gillespie's family says yesterday's terminations are a positive step, but not the final one. They're asking Congress to pass the I Am Vanessa Gillespie Act to change how the military handles sexual assaults within its ranks.
I ask the public that is watching this, I ask everyone who hears about Vanessa's name or hears about sexual violence in the military or anywhere to endorse the bill, the act, because this will keep my sister's legacy alive, and believe me, it will save lives.
The Army's Criminal Investigation Division was initially tasked with investigating Vanessa Gillispie's case. The report actually has 70 different reform recommendations, and a lot of them focus on the CID division and overhauling them. In fact, one of them actually says that investigators here at the Army should ride along with local law enforcement, which is a very unique and outside-the-box way of training them to prepare for any sort of crime that happens here on post. Tony?
All right, Mireya, thank you very much. We want to remind our viewers that before that report was released, CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell spoke exclusively with Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy, and the interview follows a year-and-a-half-long investigation into sexual assault in the military, including interviews with nearly 24 survivors and their families. Victims told us their allegations were ignored and retaliation was rampant. We asked McCarthy about the problem and where the Army goes from here.
Is there a sexual harassment and sexual assault problem in the U.S. Army?
Currently, the trend is going the wrong way, and we're going to take some pretty dramatic steps in order to reverse this trend.
Do you think it's clear that sexual harassment and sexual assault, that there's zero tolerance for it in the U.S. Army and the U.S. military?
There is zero tolerance, but at times it does persist.
The soldiers that we spoke with served at numerous Army installations all across the country. They expressed a real concern about whether the Army can police itself. Can that be done?
I believe it can, yes.
You do think the Army can police itself?
This institution, when it has its focus, its energy against anything I believe there's nothing we can't do.
The command hasn't been able to do it in the past.
These individuals have not been able to.
And they will be held accountable.
Correct.
And are there any additional structures that you put in place to make sure that commanders are held accountable in the future?
Yes, this is the message that we're sending to every echelon below me, which is all of them, that this is unacceptable.
As for the timing of all this change, Secretary McCarthy told Nora he wanted to take action before January, when President-elect Joe Biden is likely to appoint a replacement, because, as McCarthy put it, he does not want to pass this issue to his successor. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is very interesting. I mean, those numbers that Mireya put up from the report of the number of women who said they were assaulted, it's just staggering.
But I can't say enough about Nora's reporting and the investigative team and the producers who worked with her. They've been working on it for over a year and a half. And kudos to Secretary McCarthy, because he knew he was walking into a buzzsaw. I'm not calling Nora a buzzsaw. What I'm saying there is that she and her team have felt very passionate about it. He knew the questions were not going to be easy. He knew he had some very difficult questions to answer, and he still sat down. And he seemed, to me, personally aggrieved by it. He talked about having a daughter himself. But I still go back to Vanessa Gillespie and her family. If the family hadn't spoken up the way that they did, they refused to just let this go.
He was a leader here. He didn't run and hide when the reporting came out. He sat in the chair and he said, we're going to make changes. And the fact that he wants to do it before January so it can be him and not the next person is big.
And they are sweeping changes.
The reporting here is going to change.